On this 24th edition of Rugby League Down South for 2013, the RFL chairman Brian BARWICK on London, the structural changes for the leagues and his plans for the future of the sport, London Broncos retiring hooker Chad RANDALL on his time at the club, his memories and wishes for the future. We hear the latest from the London Independent Supporters Trust about their aims to get a financial stake in the Broncos, and with the champion schools we talk to one of the two southern teams that are contesting a national final this weekend. And I'll tell you what I know, which isn't much, and what I think in a little monologue later about the Broncos situation ahead of 2014. Also, just a side note, I'm trying to hopefully get 10,000 listens to the podcast before the end of the year. Hopefully, I'm on target for it. We're not doing too badly. Nearly 9,000 at the moment, with a couple more to go in the rest of the season. But if you can spread the word, it would be great. Any comments, as ever, as well, rldownsouth@gmail.com if you want to email them, or you can use Twitter. At Ian Ramsdale is my Twitter handle, I think you call it, or you can use the hashtag RLDS for Rugby League Down South. Now, you may have seen the online BBC Sports story. Rugby Football League chairman Brian BARWICK hopes the sport's proposed restructuring will be long-lasting, it reads. He told BBC London, if we're to change the structure, then let's change it for all the right reasons and then settle down and watch it for years to come. Well, that was from a chat that I had with Mr. BARWICK at Wembley just this week. You can read more on the BBC Sport website and see a video as well from our chat. But here's a longer extract from that video, which you can see on the BBC Sport website. Stuff which is unseen and unheard yet so far, where he talks about London and his plans overall for the future of the sport.
I think we need to continue to work hard in the area of media and marketing. We have to get our message across. We've got a fantastic sport, but sometimes you struggle to read about it, and sometimes you struggle to see it. We've got fantastic television contracts with great broadcasters who do us proud, but we've got to make sure that is that results in a lot of people coming to see us and commercial organisations wanting to be associated with us. So they're the sort of areas. Media, marketing, commercial, profile, help the sports profile, and I suppose from my own perspective, is living 200 miles away from the nerve centre in a way. That's 200 miles worth of perspective, and the very fact I live in Twickenham, the irony is not lost on me that what I'm trying to do is make our code move forward in a progressive way. So. It is those areas. It's areas where we're trying to get more customers, we're trying to get more clients, we're trying to make sure we're putting the best thing on the pitch we can, and we're trying to make sure in due course that people will read about it and see it in places perhaps at the moment they're not.
You mentioned that perspective and being 200 miles away. Do you think that's something the sport's needed, someone from outside to look at it and go, you know, not being sort of caught up with inside the game, saying, look, from outside, this is how it looks?
Well, whether I do, somebody else did. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it. Put it this way, when I was approached about this post, I was approached by quite a few... When the opportunity came up, I was approached by quite a lot of people in rugby league who asked me whether I'd ever consider it. And the reason was because they had seen me at a lot of rugby league. You know, if I get a ticket, I'd go, you know, and I felt comfortable with the sport. I was at a point in my life where I had some room and time in my life, working life, to do something different. And I suppose the one bit I was missing was a direct influence in a major sport. And rugby league absolutely fit the bill because I have known about this sport for 50-odd years. I've seen it here many, many times. I've been at the finals many times, including the famous 85 final. I was over there on the television gantry for that. So I did feel that I would be able to contribute without having to be dragged down into the detail. If somebody wants to trip me up about rugby league, they'll be able to. To what end, I don't know, but they will be able to.
And being in Twickenham, as you say, I know you've been to a number of Broncos games. You've learned and you've actively gone out to find out what's happening to the sport within London. From a London perspective, how healthy do you think things are? Because it's been a tough year for them, and at the moment there's question marks over their future.
Well, the London Broncos aren't the beginning and end of rugby league in London. Far from it. I mean, we want to succeed. It's great to have a senior club in London, and it's no secret that London Broncos will finish their stay at the Stoop at the end of this year. So they've got to find a new place to play for these last year of the licence period. But there's others. I've been to see London Scholars this year, and in fact they played Hemel on the day I saw them. I saw them. I'm going to the Schools Championship this Friday in Richmond. In fact, I can walk there, and there is a mix of schools in terms of locations and regions, including schools from the London region. And on Saturday at the final, there's a school from High Wycombe in the final. Which is great. Matt Dawson's old school, I think. So great community work being done. You go down. I went down to Gillingham to see the wheelchair final in the Festival World Cup, which was a fantastic event that the RFL put on, and very vibrant rugby league area that now. So things are moving, but it ain't going to be Leeds, it ain't going to be Wigan, it ain't going to be St Helens or Warrington anytime soon. It's got to build.
And with that, you mentioned when you spoke to Dave Hadfield about the fact of, London, you're going to have a look at it. You're going to give it some time, see if it works, and then make a decision over its future, and hopefully it will flourish. Do you think it's important for the sport to have that London perspective, or only if they are a suitable sort of member?
I think it's great to have it, but rugby league survived without it for a long time, and may in the future have to survive without it again. I rather hope it won't, and I rather think it won't, actually. We do need... It would be great, wouldn't it, to have a successful senior side in London, and that's what everybody is aiming at.
And there are big questions over their future next year, and question marks over what may happen. If money was to be sort of pulled out away from the club, would the RFL consider stepping in and helping them?
Well, I think that's looking too far into the future, to be honest. And I, as a non-exec independent chairman, I'd have a view about it, but I wouldn't decide policy on it. And if I did decide policy on it, I wouldn't tell you what the policy was.
In terms of the big events in London, then, there's got the Challenge Cup this weekend and also the Rugby League World Cup coming at the end of the year. Two massive occasions, really. One for different reasons, sort of bigger for a London perspective than others. But these are great opportunities to get people from around the country seeing rugby league down here. Absolutely.
The Challenge Cup finals, part of the warp and weave of British sport. It's one of those great occasions. I think I first watched it back in the early 60s on a black and white telly in Liverpool, and then we used to sort of take the air down in a football and use it as a rugby ball to replay the final in the little street I lived in. It was really part and parcel of it. And so I've watched it on the television for years. Then I worked on Grandstand for years, which is why I was where I was in 1985, sitting with Desmond Lynham in the studio there. And then I've come as a guest for many years. And it's part of what our sport is, and it's a big day out for the fans. The Rugby League World Cup's an opportunity for the sport, to put on a great tournament, first and foremost, but secondly, to try and recruit some new fans to the game. I mean, I'm a believer of the sort of concentric circles of, you start with your own fans, rugby league fans, in any sport, whatever the sport is, then general sports fans, and then people who want to come to an event. And we've got them. We want some of them, and we need some of them. And we need the profile of the sport to go up in people's imagination during that period, and I rather think it will. And people are working very hard. The RFL people who are working on the Rugby League World Cup are working night and day to make it work, so I'm hopeful it'll be a huge success, yeah.
And your team are looking at structural changes as well to the leagues from next year onwards. Promotion relegation has been talked about, or how it's decided whether teams will be in Super League, or so how the extra 2 will be cut. I know these things are ongoing, but do you think that is a decision that could be crucial to the success of the sport in the short term?
Well, I think you're right. It's ongoing. It's ongoing. So it's almost inappropriate to comment on the actual detail of how 2015 will be arrived at. What I will say is the Super League clubs have really embraced the desire to not change for change's sake, change to give the game a future. I suppose my position on it is I support the change. I will support the executive making sure that there is a positive change. Equally, I think that's the last change for a while. And because I think the sport should have great pride in the fact that it is an innovative sport. But if we're going to change the structure, let's change it. Fine, let's change it for all the right reasons, which I believe we're doing, and then let's settle down and enjoy the sport for some years to come.
And you mentioned as well before that you want to be in this position for a long time. You enjoy the sport, you've watched it before, and you've enjoyed being involved. I guess the fact that having done the role for a short period of time now, and the fact that you've still got those feelings, should be a good reflection on the sport as to what you see being involved in it as for where its future lies.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do think the sport is fantastic. I mean, if you take it at its base level, which is the sport itself, the game between the lines is fantastic. And there's a real acknowledgement across sport of how good rugby league is. I love the fan base. I love they're generational. I love the fact that they sit there and there's granddad and mum and dad and son and daughter. I love that. I think it's got 2 major broadcasters who serve it well, and we serve them well. We know we need some more commercial money in the game. We know we'd like more people to come. We know we've got a good product. We know we've got to try and earn our right to be in the newsprint a bit more than we are. But we will be in due course, but it'll take a time.
And finally, I don't know whether you've ever thought of anything like this, but do you think about your tenure as chairman and think, when I finish this role, this is what the state that I would like to lead the sport in? Do you have a goal? Do you have something that you'd like to achieve or like to do with the sport in your time?
I think it's a fair question, that, and I think the answer to the question is I'll have a better idea at the end of this calendar year, because I'll have done a circuit, I'll have done the Challenge Cup final, I'll have done the playoffs, I'll have done the Rugby League World Cup, and there'll be a structural review. So, in truth, where I end up on February the 1st, 2014, from 2013, will then be a moment to reflect on where we are.
Brian saying, Rugby League has survived without London for a long time. It may have to again, but I rather hope it won't and think it won't. I also said they aren't the beginning and the end of Rugby League in London, the London Broncos. There is being great work done. Things are moving, but Broncos aren't going to be a Leeds, Wigan, Warrington or St Helens anytime soon. It's got to build. I think pretty much he was backing London and saying it's important for the sport for the future, but I think he's also saying that they won't be protected in any way and that they've got to stand on their own 2 feet, and if that means some form of rebuilding, then so be it. But I think they're doing what they can, and they'll do all they can to help if that indeed was something that maybe arose. We'll hear from Chad RANDALL in just a few moments, and also the Rugby League London Independent, and also the Rugby League London Independent Supporters Trust. But what do I know ahead of 2014 for the London Broncos, and what do I think? Well, what do I know? Pretty much what I've said and what you know, really. At the moment, there are no firm plans. I have been trying to talk to the club about where they're going or what they're doing or the plans that they have. And at the moment, they're not in a position to say anything. Now, what do I read into that? I think, and this is me thinking, this is no substance to these thoughts, So what do I read into the fact that they have nothing to say? Well, I think at the moment that because there are no firm plans, nothing is signed, sealed and delivered, so to speak, that they don't want to swing either way, one way or the other. So when you're talking about the rumours that are around about David Hughes maybe withdrawing his investment, I think understandably you can see why those stories are there, because he's not been happy with the way things are going. The side that he's putting all his money in haven't been doing what he would want them to do, and he would maybe think about whether he wants to continue to invest in the future, dependent on where they are. He has said, though, that the money is there until the end of the 2014 season. He said he would back the club at the end of this licence period. So as far as I'm concerned, as I'm aware at the moment, then that still stands. They just need a plan for next year. It just needs to be finalised. Once the plan is finalised, as far as I understand or believe or am expecting, then he would back those plans, because I think he's obviously been involved in the discussions. Now, what the plan is and the details of it, I really don't know. You could be looking at fresh investment, new investment. You could be looking at a change in structure. You could be looking at altogether different setups. And then the question is whether that would mean that the side are in Super League or not. I think at the moment, I've been saying I'm 50-50 swaying more to yes, I think they will be in Super League. All the signs are, and from what I can tell, the plans are being made for this club to be in Super League, and they have a place there for next year. So unless something significant was to change, then they would take that place in Super League for 2014 because it's there and it's available for them. They don't currently have too many players signed up for 2014, which is a worry. But again, it seems to be that because of the problems they've had securing where their playing base is going to be, it's been difficult to talk to players, or players aren't going to want to sign contracts, I guess, if they don't, or they're uncertain of the future. There may be people that are waiting to sign on the dotted line on the news of whatever the decision is, or whatever the deal is that the club strike in terms of a playing ground for the future. I don't know. That's just me guessing. It looks at the moment that whenever something happens, they are running out of time, in that there may not be the number of players they would want to. But I think I'd be right in saying that I'm sure that people have been thinking about these things. And like I said, from what I have heard, the plan is that they will continue and will be in Super League. There has been some people that have got in touch with me saying, I've heard that they might be going down to the Championship and stuff like that. Again, that would mean a big change in the club, I think, that something would have to happen that would change. Therefore, they'd want to be put in the Championship almost, and I don't think that's going to be the case. And you'd hope that maybe, depends on a deal that can be struck, the club may well look healthy or healthier once they come out of it. The big worry is over all this as to whether long-standing fans, or even maybe the more casual fans, are going to have been lost because they maybe won't travel, or they've been disillusioned with things that have happened over the last few months. So I think that's the main worry about it all, as to whether those people will still be interested when a decision is made. But I think in terms of the silence and the club not saying anything, that's because a plan is being worked on. If there was no plan, I guess nothing would be said. Everyone's talked about Barnet, whether they're going to move in with the Hive. If you look online at the local paper in particular, there's stories of the lease agreement that the football club have there. And at the moment, it seems uncertain as to whether, if Barnet were in the professional ranks, of course they got relegated down to the conference last year, as to whether they'd actually be able to play at this new facility because of residents' complaints around there. It wasn't permitted to have professional sport, or professional football is what they've looked at. I guess the question now is, does that extend to other sports? Does it mean that a professional side at the moment cannot play games there? And could it be fixed for next year? And this is all if the Barnet Hive option looks like the favourite. There are others that have been mentioned. From what I understand, the Barnet option is one of the major, if not the first choice option, but that doesn't mean that there are not other options at the moment. But I think that's pretty much as I know and as much as I think. I think a lot of people have banded around speculation of David withdrawing his money or his investment, and as far as I'm aware, I think you'd be considering it, wouldn't you? You'd be thinking, is it all worth it? But if a plan can be found for next year, I don't see any reason why he should. It's if the plan for next year it doesn't work that I think he would then think, well, is this really worth it? And if it ended up being let's just say, if you end up saying we can't find a playing ground, we're going to have to play at these other venues at one-off. Okay, we can't do it. We're going to have to go into the Championship or something like that. That's maybe then he would go, well, am I really going to want to fund this? But if he can have his side in Super League, I think, then he will carry on. Of course, they need new investment at some point. Will it come at this point? We're not sure. But that's pretty much, I think, is as much as I could say and guess at the moment. Like I said, none of that is in any way confirmed. That's just what I understand and a lot about what I think may happen. But to be fair, nothing of that is confirmed, and anything could happen, and it could really go either way. But for what it's worth, I thought I'd spend a bit of time to tell you that. So let's now hear from the Broncos hooker Chad RANDALL. He announced his retirement, didn't he, from rugby league after not receiving a new contract offer. The 32-year-old made 197 appearances for the club before his season was abruptly ended by a hamstring injury in June. RANDALL, who joined the Londoners from NRL side Manly Sea Eagles in 2005, hasn't been offered a new contract and ends his time at the Twickenham Stoop just 5 games short of the club appearance record currently held by Steel Wretchless. Here is my chat with Chad RANDALL.
If there was another 5 games after the season, I probably could have played. My leg's pretty good now, but I haven't been rehabbing it too intensely because I knew I wouldn't be able to play again this year. So I've just sort of been taking it easy. At the start of the year, we're definitely talking about doing another year. But then obviously my injury came, and then the club told me they didn't want me. So I sat down and we spoke about it. Sort of thought, if we're going to take the kids out of school, maybe it's best we just take them home. And that I still feel like I could probably play some more rugby, but that's just the way we've chosen it, and it's more of a sort of a family decision.
How disappointing is it? I mean, I know players don't often think about records and appearances and tries and stuff like that, but you're 5 short, aren't you, of Steel Wretchless's all-time London appearance record, and you won't manage to add to that.
Yeah, I know. I'm not really. I'm in good company there with Steel and Rob Purdom. But Stevie McGee around, you're always aware of how many games you've played and what's coming up next, and you always get a little present in your bag when you reach a milestone or something like that. So, mate, to be honest, I'm just glad I got around 200, and I feel like I've been a good service for the club, and I'm a loyal guy, and that's I can look back on that and be happy about that.
It's obviously been a bit difficult last few years, but have you enjoyed your time in London? You obviously became more settled and enjoyed the city. Have you enjoyed being part of the Harlequins Rugby League and London Broncos setup?
Like I was saying before, the people I've met at the club, and that was only a touch on it, the people I've met over the last couple of years. I knew a few of them before, but, those friendships I've always enjoyed that aspect of it. As far as the rugby league side of it, we had some really good years with a team that it was only probably worth half the salary cap, but, we had such a good bond through 08, 09, that we really pulled for each other, and we worked harder for each other, and we got a lot of results. I think 2009 we'll come in third after round 15, and then we lost about 5 guys through injuries at the back end of that year after we had a big game against Leeds at home with a decent crowd. And I still look back on those games that maybe if we had won them and stuff like that, would have it been different the way it's panning out now. But definitely we played some great footy over the years, and I had some great times. And Brian Mack was obviously a big part of my career, and he was a great coach to me. He really brought the best out of me with my confidence and things like that.
And with the, you've obviously been at the club for a while, you've seen things change, and the club's in almost a completely different situation now. How do you feel that the club is at the moment in terms of where it's going? You've obviously seen a lot change.
The last 2.5 years has been really tough. We put so much pressure on ourselves to win, and I know everyone else, wants us to win, and it affects everything. It affects your home life. You're always in a bad mood, and puts relationships on the strain and things like that. I think, with the desire and everything that everyone so badly wants to win, it's created almost a negative feel of the club. But there's definitely things within the club that are getting done, and the junior system that is coming through now. These young kids are quite amazing. The athletes we've got, they're just going to be taught the right things, and they're starting younger and younger. The group that's come through now, and under 19s, they're about mid-table. Last year they were struggling, and the next group of kids that are going to come through are better than these group of kids. So, I definitely think there's something there. To be tragic for these boys not to have a Super League team to aspire to. But I don't think the moving north, traditionally, I think, your Will Sharp, Murray, is struggling a little bit up there now. If they go up there too young, they just can't get into it. Louis McCarthy's a bit different. He went up there when he was 25. So I just think they need a Super League club down here, and hopefully the RFL can see that. And if England Rugby League, are really serious about beating Australia, I think with the mixed race of London that's coming through, and these athletes that you're getting, the RFL can see that and put some time and money into it. I definitely think in 10 years' time, 5-10 years' time, the group that you'll be able to pick for an England team will be so much stronger, and you'll be competing a lot more with Australia and New Zealand.
You've obviously done a lot of work with the under-19s. You've helped coach them in recent years. I was talking to Elias McCarney just yesterday, and he was saying about the influence of having people like yourself. Jamie Sauer, just here for a short time, but has been offering his help for the young lads as well. Is that something that you felt has been an important part of you being at this club?
Yeah, I think I used to do a lot with Brian Mack, and then a little bit in the early stage with Rob Powell with helping out, and it's always something I've wanted to explore, and always something I thought I'd be all right at in the coaching aspect. And about a couple of years ago, I just started to help out with the juniors, and this year especially, I've done a lot with the under-19s, and I think it's great, and I think Luke Dorn's put a tremendous amount of effort in for these kids, and you can really see the benefit in their playing rugby league. And just, I think having guys like us around, just gives them that knowledge that maybe they don't have compared to some of the guys that have been playing since top 5. So it's something that I love doing, and we love doing, and these kids, the best you can get out of it is to see them improving and doing the things that you're teaching them or giving them experience in.
And I've written a piece for the Matchday programme for the final one at the Stoop this year. And I've basically said, there's people who've got to buy into the London thing, and players, coaches, spectators, they don't realise quite what the system does in London until you're part of it, until you see it, until you see what's happening. And I guess you've seen that, and, you've based off everything that, you just said then, as to sort of what you've discovered, uncovered, and been watching in the last 8 years.
Yeah, I think, Ramo, anyone who's touched London Rugby League sees there's potential. Anyone who's been here, they see there's potential, but obviously economic climate's had a bit to do with it, and performance is one. I think leadership is another. It's, I think if they've done better and with a bit more experience at different parts of that, it could be totally different. Hopefully, in the future, someone will step in and see there is potential here, and we can learn from the mistakes we've made, and we can make London a great rugby league town and place where we can pull juniors from.
And I guess as well, you've seen the potential, you've seen what can happen. It has been a tough few years for you in the last couple of years, and things haven't maybe worked out the way that you would have wanted them to. But you must be desperate to see this London side reach that true potential.
Oh, mate, it'd be a dream for me, for this club to be at the top. And, well, I think they could be, you know. I don't like to refer too much to NRL, but no, that Melbourne Storm, they're still run by News Limited, or they've just been taken over. That was run for 15, 20 years by the game, just to get a foothold down there. And, you know, look what they've done with it. And I'll tell you now that we have a lot more juniors in London than Melbourne Storm do down in Melbourne. So it's just a matter of obviously getting a winning team for one, and having a business plan over a certain amount of years, and, you know, really sticking to your goals and driving it forward.
In fact, when we published the BBC story with Chad RANDALL, based on what you just heard and the quotes in there, it was picked up by other media organisations. Some gave credit to BBC London, some didn't. A number of organisations and papers and the Press Association, the Evening Standard credited BBC London 94.9 for the story, but Sky, they didn't, and they put the story on their website with a couple of quotes, not crediting the BBC London. So in return, I stole what they wrote as their story for my podcast. I thought that was only fair. So the introduction you heard to the Chad RANDALL piece, straight off the Sky website, if you want to go and read it, there you go. And also there's more from Chad RANDALL. I didn't give you the full interview there. In fact, there is more stuff from him in the September edition of 4020 magazine. I'm writing a story with Chad about his time, what he's seen, and in particular the time with the under-19. So that you will find in the September edition of 4020 magazine, hopefully, provided they consider my copy to be worthy of print. Now, moves are afoot to set up a London Independent Supporters Trust with the goal of having a financial stake in the club. They were giving out flyers at the final home game of the season. I've been catching up with Steve Newcombe, the man trying to drive it forward, to see how it's all gone. We didn't dig too far into the backstory of where the idea came from, because we mentioned that in an interview that Steve did on BBC London, which you can access from his website. I'll post the links on my Twitter, Tumblr, and on the podcast description as well for this programme, if you would like to listen to that as a sort of where the idea has come from. But you can also see those details on his website. This is more about where he's up to now, and if it's really a tangible and a realistic option for the club to be taking a stake in the Broncos, for the trust to be taking a stake in the London Broncos in the future. But Steve told me about how the flyering had gone at the final home game of the season at the Twickenham Stoop.
We've been supporting the club for a long time, and there's a lot of passionate people that support the club, and I feel that it's sort of slipping through our fingers. I don't want to sit there and watch it happen, so I think there's a lot of people out there with goodwill who want to rally behind us.
How uncertain is the club's future?
We don't know. As simple as that. There's very little coming out from the club. On the field, as you were saying, we're not performing very well, and I think if we stand up and put a marker down for the future, that we can build a sustainable and stable club beyond 2014.
The owner puts in around £2.5 million a year, we gather, netting losses of around 1.6 million. How much money would you be looking to raise for this if the Supporters Trust were to take it over?
Well, the more the merrier. You're talking hundreds of thousands of pounds commitment, obviously. Having started this thing, I've been pleasantly surprised by the positive feedback we're getting, but we have to get numbers. So that's why we're going to be at the home game next week handing out leaflets so that as wide a number of people as possible can find out that this thing's happening, and let's see if they are as interested in it as I am.
How well has the group been supported in the canvassing you've done so far?
Well, yeah, very well. It's been web-based fundamentally up till now, and we have had some good response. A couple of journalists have picked up on the story, and it's starting to spread a wee bit. So I think it can gather some legs after the game next Saturday, and if all goes well, then maybe we'll be starting to form the trust ready for next season and see if we can make a meaningful contribution to the club.
Have you spoken to the London Broncos about your plans?
Yeah, I've had a quick conversation with Gus Mackay, the CEO, who was listened to me very courteously, and he certainly wasn't obstructive. He realises the scale of the task that we would have to undertake if we were going to be successful. So the door is half open, I guess. If there's only 30 of us, then the door won't be open. If there's 300, 500, 700 of us, then it will.
What are the next steps? You said that there's a long road potentially to get this off the ground. What are the next steps?
Yeah, so we're asking people to make a pledge, and it is only a pledge. We're not asking them to bank money, even if that's just being a member and being able to contribute something of their skills and time. Or if we can get a core of people who are willing to put in £1,000, for example, then obviously that makes the whole thing easier. But I'm very interested in it being a democratic organisation, a one-member, one-vote organisation, so that people really feel that they've got something to contribute. And if we get it right, then I think we can see the crowds coming back and really engaging with the communities that we play in.
And how hard a season has this been for the fans like yourself, given what happened in, having made the semi-final of the Challenge Cup and what happened in that game?
It's been very tough. I mean, the quarter-final at Sheffield was obviously a great time for us that were there, and then we came down with a bang in Leigh. It's been tough the last couple of years, and we want to get back to the situation we had a few years ago where it was something to look forward to going to the game, win or lose. We seem to have lost that in the Broncos for the last year or two, and we need to get it back because tons of kids coming through. We've got some really good young London players playing for us now. We want to make sure that the next generation come through and have Super League to aspire to.
And in terms of the Super League, have they been in contact at all? Because, it's in their interests, of course, to have a club in London.
Not as yet, because it's so early. I mean, the Rugby Football League do support the Supporters Direct organisation, which is the sort of umbrella organisation for sports clubs that are looking to get supporter ownership. And there are a few supporters trust in Rugby League, although obviously the most high-profile ones are in football. So we'll wait and see. I like to think that as a community we can fund a stable Super League club in London, and we'll hopefully be starting work on that in the next few weeks.
We obviously, those you mentioned that it's been done in football before. Hemel Stags, Rochdale, two clubs that have been run by a supporters trust. So it's obviously something that, have you spoken to those clubs about how they run things and done some research?
I have been in contact with Supporters Direct. I actually have been in contact with Rochdale, but it's very early days. Obviously, it's a different scale if you're trying to run a full-time professional organisation rather than a part-time one, even in Rochdale's case with their rich history. So it's a bit of a different kettle of fish, but I shall be leaning on whoever I can lean on in the next few months if we're going to be successful.
Well, best wishes to Steve and the team, him and his wife at the moment, but also the people who have so far pledged to help or donate things, become a member of the London Independent Supporters Trust. If you want to go to their website, RLList for Rugby League London Independent Supporters Trust .wordpress.com. I think that's just from memory, I think, but you'll be able to find it online. You'll find the link there as well to this story and the interview he did with BBC London, which gives you a bit of a backstory as to where the idea came from and why he decided to try and set up the London Independent Supporters Trust. And finally, for the podcast for this week, more good news for Southern schools in the Champions Schools competition. Another Year 7s team through to the boys' final at Wembley, RGS High Wycombe. They'll play on the Wembley turf ahead of the Challenge Cup final this weekend. I shall be there to watch and see how they got on, see if they can repeat the victory of the Howard of Effingham School from Surrey from last year. But also a Year 9 girls team from Dartford in Kent have got to their final as well. That's being played on Friday night in Richmond. In fact, the RFL chairman, Brian BARWICK, mentioned before, didn't he? He's going to go along and watch. He only lives around the corner. He's going to walk there to the game. So we'll see what he makes of that in the future. But I've been talking to the subject coordinator for PE at the LEIGH Academy, who are the school that have got the Year 9 girls team to this national final in Richmond. So the LEIGH Academy subject coordinator of PE is Matteo Stamato, or I guess Mr. Stamato, I guess is what you should call him.
Prior to me actually joining the school 3 years ago, Mark Russell from Medway Dragons, I believe, came in and did a taster session, and this group of girls took it on, and it's just developed year upon year. And the gentleman when I took over from last year, he was a rugby guy himself, and I just followed suit, and it came to the time of year when rugby league was being played, and the school and the girls asked whether I would continue it, being a rugby man myself, and I accepted, and it's just snowballed from there, really.
Did you, or were you surprised when the subject of rugby league in that school was brought to you?
Yeah, very surprised. Rugby league is growing massively down south. Even at the previous school, I was approached to do it, which was a rugby union school. And I know many rugby union schools are doing it to reinforce and transfer the skills and the fitness from one coach to the other. And I had declined it every year in my teaching career until I joined LEIGH Academy, just because I felt I should give it a go, and I'm glad I did.
So your Year 9 girls, is that right?
Yep, Year 9 girls, yeah.
They've got through to the national final, and I mean, how many games have you had to play initially to get through to this point?
They've been mini competitions. Started off by playing down at Medway, playing all the Kent schools that played that, and I believe there was 2 pools of 5 for that. We successfully won those games, which then meant we moved on to play in the southeast of England representative competition. Again, there was 2 pools within that. We won that competition again, and the girls had done that. That was the 3rd consecutive year they got to that stage.
Wow.
And won. We then got to play in Derby. Again, there was 2 groups of about 5 teams, and in the last 2 previous years, the girls had only got to that stage and they'd lost.
Right.
So 3rd time lucky, we got to this stage and won, which then meant we were able to play down at Richmond this year in the national final.
So is it down in Richmond because of your place being in the final? I mean, may it have been somewhere else if it wasn't you?
I've heard previously it's been usually up north.
Right.
But I do understand there are a couple more London teams, or London schools, beg your pardon, participating and have done well. And it ties in with the Challenge Cup final as well, which is on Saturday. So I think it's just trying to centralise everything for the rugby league people as well.
And I thought as well it'd be worth talking to you this week because the team that gets the headlines really is the Year 7s. You know, if they get through to the final of their competition, because that's at Wembley on Saturday. So luckily there's another Southern team there this year in RGS High Wycombe. But I guess you've sort of slipped under the radar a bit because everyone's looking at this Year 7 side, aren't they? Have you had much attention on your Year 9 girls team?
The first sort of point of call I did to raise the profile was to go to the local news shop and myself, and they kindly put an article in. And then through Mark at Medway Dragons, he helped put me in contact with some people at the London Broncos, and they've been a great help trying to come in with coaching and their media side of things. They came in and interviewed me as well, and that helped generate another article in the local newspaper. And as a result of that, there'll be another article in the London Broncos rugby magazine for the area and in their programme as well. So London Broncos have been great, and I know they've got a good history of developing players as well.
Absolutely. And I know that Matt Dawson went to the RGS High Wycombe school that's got through to the Year 7 boys final at Wembley. Do you know of any sort of rugby people that have come through the LEIGH Academy? Or I guess it's a fairly new school.
I don't know of anyone that's come through at LEIGH Academy that's gone through the ranks at Rugby League. I did come from Hayes School in Bromley, and my previous student there, Toby Everett, he's only 17, and he's in the under-19 squad, and he's been offered a full-time professional contract to start next season as well. So that was one of my first sort of connections with Rugby League, and he's at the London Broncos as well. So that's where I've got another connection. So I'm just keen to see the girls do just as well as Toby, hopefully, but I'm sure they'll do fine.
And so just tell us who you're playing and how tough you expect it to be, because when it gets to this level of the competition, I guess, the previous rounds as well, you're coming up against schools and girls that have played the game
sort of competitively, I guess, slightly more than maybe your girls have, and they're usually quite well drilled.
Yeah, we found that when we went up to Derby for the national competition, I found there was a big difference. As you say, they've played more. It's kind of ingrained in them to play rugby league. And where we've come from, it's just, we've learnt it in PE, we've developed it. Probably have down south, there's not as many teams to play.
Yeah.
And as a result, sometimes the quality isn't as good.
Yeah.
But I've seen our team develop week upon week, regardless of the opposition. They've always come out and played better rugby, which is something that we've tried to strive to do from day one, really play the best rugby we possibly can, regardless of the opposition. And the girls have stuck to that, and we've now seen the fruits of what we've sown, really, because we're now in the final.
And having the Broncos guys come along, and the London RL guys being interested, has that helped your girls? Because I went along last year to the Year 7 lads side that eventually went on to win at Wembley, and they got Jamie Peacock of Leeds, former England captain, to come along and do a little training session with them, and it really gave them something to go into that Wembley final and really sort of believe that they could do it, and a few extra tips and stuff. Have you learnt good stuff from the Broncos and the RFL guys?
Yeah, definitely. There's so much to the game that even I'm learning as well. And the London Broncos, they've definitely come in. They've done some sessions, a couple of top tips, and sometimes it's just nice for them to reinforce what I've been saying in training to the girls, for them to hear it and actually say, well, actually, sir is right. He's saying the right things, and just little top tactics for the girls, and something for them to aspire to, because some of the guys they brought in to help out with the training sessions are only a couple of years older than the girls themselves, and this is something to aspire to, something that is achievable to them. So I'm always very grateful to those guys who came in. So hopefully with their input, stuff from Medway Dragons with Mark, and what I've done during school and after school in extracurricular, hopefully that combination will come together for the final on Friday, and hopefully we can beat the opposition.
And anybody who's listened to the entire podcast that this interview is in will have heard the RFL chairman, Brian BARWICK, former FA chairman, say that he's going to come along on Friday and watch. He only lives around the corner. He's going to walk to the ground, in fact. And he's looking forward to seeing what the Southern girls can do.
That's fantastic. That's great news. And I'll tell the girls that the girls are absolutely ready for it. We've got another training session tomorrow at the school. The girls have given up their summer. I've given up my summer as well, just to ensure we're fully ready for this. We are missing one or two players due to family commitments because it's in the summer holiday. So we've changed our way of playing slightly, but the girls are able to adapt to that, and they'll be fully ready and committed and ready to show everybody what we can do.
And I really look forward to finding out quite what happens. But how good are your girls? Are they in with a shot?
Absolutely. I'll be very disappointed if they lose.
So that's Mr. Stamato, Matteo Stamato from LEIGH Academy in Dartford in Kent. He's their subject coordinator of PE there. Good luck to them in their final on Friday. Good luck as well to the boys from RGS High Wycombe going up against the Year 7 side from the Castleford Academy. Of course, it's not the same side that the guys from Howard of Effingham went up against at Wembley, because of course those Year 7s from last year now Year 8s, but another Year 7 final from the Castleford Academy, looking to be beaten by a Southern side. That'd surely rub salt into the wounds, wouldn't it? I did try and catch up with RGS High Wycombe, but haven't managed to talk to them this week. If I do it over the next couple of days before Friday, I'll put it on Audio Boo, but you'll also see the news on Twitter on Saturday. I'll be at Wembley to let you know how that goes. I'll put some audio up as well, hoping to catch up with him at the end of the game as well. Also tried to get hold of the Oxford coach Tony Benson this week. Failed to talk to him as well. We had promised to get them on the programme, so we'll try from him in the next programme. Apologies to the Oxford RL fans who have not managed to talk to the coach, but they're heading for the playoffs, aren't they? So it will give us something to talk to in a couple of weeks' time. Do continue to please send your thoughts. Always good to hear from you on the email rldownsouth@gmail.com. You can always tweet at Ian Ramsdale or use the hashtag RLDS. An interesting few stories ahead of us, aren't they? Unfortunately, I'm just not sure when those stories are going to be, but when they are, I'll bring them to you. Thanks again for listening.